Al 1 de Mayo.
Hello and welcome to the Pick and Pop Podcast. I am your host, Sam Dusenberry Jr. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at TheSamD, that's TheeSCMD. Follow along with the show at Pick and Pop Pod on Twitter at Pick N, no and, just the letter N, Pick and Pop Pod. Subscribe and rate 5 stars, nothing less. Tell a friend. Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, Stitcher Radio, all major podcast platforms. Search for The Pick and Pop Podcast, no and, the letter N, The Pick and Pop Podcast. Musical production done by May 1st Music. Support him at soundcloud.com/May 1st Music. Yo, so is it fuck Jerry Krause or nah? Now y'all get me? Now do y'all understand my whole, mindset of why organizations are overblown and overrated and all of that? Now do y'all get me? Because it's fuck Jerry Krause, right? So the Last Dance premiered last night. I'm doing this right now at the crack of dawn. It is 4 a.m. And it's 4 a.m. and I'm doing this pod at 4 a.m. because I don't have cable. So I download, torrent, stream everything, right? So what I did was, since I couldn't watch it with y'all live, I knocked out super early. I was like, yo, I'm going to just crash early so I can get up, knock this pod out, dumb early. So when y'all get up at y'all normal time, y'all will see that the recap pod has already dropped. That was the mentality I had. That's happened. I woke up about 1 a.m., got on my torrent shit, downloaded the first 2 episodes, knocked those out, took some notes, looked up some things to research just to double check some things. And now it's 4 a.m. and we podding. So MJ and Shawn Kemp on the same squad. Can you imagine what that would have done to my 13, 14, 15-year-old brain? Can you imagine me in Southside already being a Bulls fan because of Jordan, loving Shawn Kemp just because it's fucking Shawn Kemp, and then having Jordan and Kemp on the same squad? I mean, they asked Jordan a few years ago if he would have gotten some chips off with Kemp, if it would have been the same type of vibe like how it was with him and Pippen. And even MJ just like, probably not. We probably don't get no chips off. And that's probably true, but goddamn, I would have wanted to see that shit. I would have wanted to see that. But look, there's going to be some things that people are going to learn, right? And I have to remember some stuff because I definitely forgot some shit that I saw off rip in these first 2 episodes. Like, I forgot Scottie wanted out in 97. I forgot that he did that trade demand shit in the middle of the season. I had completely blocked that out. I remember the rumors of him being traded the summer prior after that 5th chip. I remember that. But I forgot that during the last season of this Last Dance thing that he wanted it out and he like openly wanted to trade the man. I had forgotten that. But it's just, man, this doc is going to be so important, right? And it's nothing against Bron. It's nothing against Kobe. It's nothing against whoever you think is the GOAT. But y'all know where I stand. Y'all know where I stand firmly. I've always said, nope, it is Jordan. I don't care what you say. It is Jordan. And I got dudes that are a lot younger than me that are listening to the pod. And I got dudes that are older than me listening to the pod. And I got dudes that are older than me that still hit me with Wilt, still hit me with Kareem. And I'm like, I bet, got it, understood. And then I got younger cats than me that's telling me, yo, it's Kobe, it's LeBron. All right, cool, I got you. But for me, dog, to the day they put me 6 feet deep, it's Michael Jeffrey Jordan from Brooklyn. That's who it is for me. And there's not much you can tell me to move me off that point. You can twist narratives. You can talk that plumber shit if you want. You could do whatever you want. But off the first 2 hours, if you haven't thought, or if you really thought someone else was the GOAT, and you watch that 2 hours and you still feel that way, then I just want to know what kind of game of basketball are you watching? Like, well, what is your interpretation of what the GOAT is? Like, I wish Wilt could have been in the modern era. I wish. just to see what that would have looked like in live motion, in color, not in still photos, holding up a 100 sign. Like, I wanted to see live action stuff, not black and white grainy footage. I wanted to see HD Wilt. Didn't happen. It's the curse of times, the curse of the era that you're in, right? Jordan came along at the right time. He was the right dude at the right era. Can we talk about that second year, bro? That second year when he broke the foot. And we need to go back and do some math here. Because Jordan's 5th all time in scoring, right? And we saw what he did in his rookie year. And how prolific he was at scoring the ball. And we saw what he was after the injury. When he came back and he dropped that 49 and 63 in the Boston Garden. Let's be conservative, right? And add the numbers up of how many more points Jordan would have and where that would put him current day. So he dropped 3,000 total points that next year, his third year. He dropped about a little over 2,300 his rookie year. So let's balance that out. Let's say he drops 2,700 points that second year. Improvement over the rookie year, but not as much as the third year, right? That would put him back at being third. That would put him back at being third. That would be more points than Bron and Kobe. And again, 2,700 is me being conservative. He could have put up 3 Gs like he did the next year and put more distance between Bron and Kobe. Bruh, I understand the plumber thing. I understand you want to crack jokes. You want to nitpick and pull up certain things, and all the teams he beat weren't that good. All right, so, and I'm jumping the gun. But y'all know how I feel about MJ. And if you want passion from me, talk to me about one of my teams growing up, and I'll give you passion. Whether it's positive or negative, you're going to get the passion from me. So let's get into the 91 Lake Show. 91 Lake Show, they was like, oh, Magic was old. They won 58 games in the regular season. Is that good or not? Oh, Portland wasn't that good. It was just, I mean, look, I know how I feel about Clyde, but I mean, look, the Blazers were the Blazers. 57 games they won that year. Oh, the Suns were just Barkley in 62 games that year they won. Oh, the Sonics, it was just GP and Kemp. 64 games they won that year. Oh, the Jazz was old. It was just Stockton and Malone. 64 and 62 wins. So what are you telling me? What are you telling me about the teams that Jordan had to go through to win chips? That plumber narrative, if anything should come out of this doc, and it's only 2 hours in, we still got 8 more to go, is that whole Jordan only beat a bunch of plumber shit has to stop. If it still exists after this, then it's just some hateration shit. It's just hateration up in this dancery. That's all it can be. If you're still pushing that plumber narrative after 10 hours of watching MJ's Swiss cheese numerous Hall of Famers. I mean, you want to talk about that 49 and that 63 against the Celtics in the old Boston Garden. There were 5 Hall of Famers on that team. 5. And I know we talk about Bron. Bron has to go up against the Warriors, and the Warriors had 4 Hall of Famers. When you throw in, well, I don't think the habitual nutheader is going to be. I don't think H&H is going to be in the Hall of Fame, but y'all might put him in. But you talk about H&H, Steph, Clay, Durant. Oh, that's 4 Hall of Famers. Dog, Jordan had to go up against 5. Dennis Johnson, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Bill Walton. 5 Hall of Famers. And he put up 112 points in 2 games on their head. On the road. With no threes. What are we talking about? Love Kobe. Love Bron. Love Kareem. Love Wilt. But this Jordan shit is different, bruh. This shit hit different, bruh. And, you know, this doc is going to destroy Jerry Krause. And you see some of them trying to shoot him bail. Paxson shooting him bail. Bill Wennington shooting him bail. Reinsdorf, of course, is protecting him and stuff like that. And then we know Jerry Krause passed on, so there's a melancholy. You know, we do that in death. We prop people up. When people pass away, we don't want to accentuate the negative. You know, we want to focus on the positive. But yo, bruh, Jerry Krause was horrible. He deserved to be locked out of that locker room the way that they treated Jordan when he came back from the broken foot. He deserved all the slander. Yes, you want to give him praise for the moves that he made. You want to give him props for the fact that he was able to get Horace Grant. He was able to draft Horace Grant. He was able to trade for Scotty or get the Sonics to draft Scotty for them and make the deal, whatever. You want to give him props for that? Cool. But trying to walk back that quote, players and coaches don't win championships, organizations do. Trying to walk that back like he ain't get that off. And yeah, he could spin that in the little clip they showed. He could spin that like, oh, the reporter walked that back or said I was misquoted or whatever. Dog, nah. Seeing how Jerry Krause has moved, and again, we're only 2 hours in. There's more shit coming. There's more wild Jerry Krause shit coming, right? Or at least there better be. There better be. But off these first 2 hours, do you really think Jerry Krause was misquoted? Do you really think the fact that he told Phil, I don't care if you go 82-0, you still out of here? Can you imagine the gall? Can you imagine the gall of telling Phil Jackson, fresh off 5 chips and almost sneaking one off in 93, 94? Telling him, yeah, dog, I don't care if y'all go 82-0 and win another chip, you ain't coming back. I just went fishing with Tim Floyd. He's the one. Can you imagine the nuts it took to get that off? And the whole Phil Jerry Krause thing is it's not only a Napoleon complex, and they touched on that because, Jerry Krause was short and fat. But it was the whole thing of he felt, and again, this is only 2 hours in, so they got 8 more hours to play with. They have to explore the notion that Krause felt that he built and made Phil Jackson. Krause went and got Phil Jackson from the CBA and put him on the assistant coaching staff. Like, he did that. So Krause always felt like Phil was supposed to bow down and should feel indebted. Whereas Phil probably has the notion of, yo, I was already that dude. I just needed the shot. You gave me the shot and I took it and ran with it. But I don't know if that should make Phil always feel like he has to bow down to Jerry every time out, especially once you see how Jerry is. See, that's the thing. You could be grateful for the person that put you on, right? But then once you see how that person that put you on moves, that person moves funny style. I mean, are you still supposed to rock with him like that? Phil got the opportunity, got the CBA, got the look that he always was fighting for. I mean, what? Then he coached down in Puerto Rico? And like, this is not even, I mean, dog, this is when basketball was not a thing. I mean, it's still not really a thing in PR, but it was not a thing when Phil was out there coaching. So you go rescue son from PR after he goes to the CBA. PR, you rescue him from PR and the CBA. You bring him up to the big time. He gets an opportunity once, and again, hope they get there, once Mike gets Doug Collins about the paint for the first time. Because he does it again when they go and they play in Washington. But Mike gets Doug Collins about the paint, and then Phil takes the seat, and then things begin to change once Tex Winter gets involved and Mike buys into the triangle. Like, all of this stuff you're going to see. I mean, they got 8 hours to play with. They should be able to do that. I know next week they said one of the episodes is the Rodman episode. Man, there's so much shit here. So they got to get into Rodman being the enemy with the Bad Boy Pistons, and they played 4 straight years in the playoffs, and the Pistons won 3 out of those 4 years. And then they got to transition that into him coming into the Bulls and how him and Scotty had to squash him shit because Scotty's such an enigma. I mean, you saw his story, right? Humble beginnings, the humblest of humble beginnings, 2 paralyzed people in the crib, was a guard and grew 5, 6, 7 inches. Like, yo, his story is one that they make movies of. Like, you could do a Lifetime, Hallmark, Disney movie off of the Scottie Pippen story to a certain point, right? I mean, we don't want to talk about Larsa Pippen, and that won't be in the Disney film. But when it comes to the Pippen story, you got to talk about the fact that now we realize he was severely underpaid, or now the masses will realize he was underpaid. We knew it then because he openly talked about it then. I used to read in Sports Illustrated all the time how Pippen was frustrated, or Peter Vesey growing up here in New York doing the hoop du jour. He would always drop the tea about Pippen being frustrated with his salary. But now they got to get into the migraine shit, and that will probably be worked into this next episode. So look for that. Scottie was hated out here. He was called soft, and you heard the thing of him and Oakley, and goddamn. Is there any more Oakley moment than him yoking up Scottie by the collar and then smacking him on camera? Who gets away with shit like that? Charles Oakley. Only Oak. Who else gets away with stuff like that? Who can openly smack their teammate and the teammate just smiles and takes it and walks away? Only Charles Oakley. Ask Tyrone Hill. He'll tell you the same thing. And who was the guard? Jeff McGinnis. Definitely ask Jeff McGinnis. But you have the migraine thing about Scottie, and he was being deemed soft because he missed time in the playoffs. He wouldn't play in certain games because he had migraines and he couldn't play through it. So the narrative spun that, Scottie's soft. Jordan needs another number 2 guy. Like, Scottie's not built enough to be the sidekick because he doesn't play when, the tough playoff games because of some damn headache. Like, migraines weren't taken seriously enough to miss a game for. And then you have the Kukoc. The Pippen Kukoc narrative, that has to be talked about. Yeah, it's if you could have gave this to a 13, 14, 15, basically up top was 17, you could have gave this to a 17-year-old Sam D, 10 hours of Bulls footage with all this uncut stuff, with all this unedited, letting dudes curse. Oh, dude, I would have been in a euphoric coma. My guy deadass would have been in a euphoric coma if you could have gave me this back then. Amazing. This shit is really just putting it right into my veins. I'm on some D'Angelo Russell shit. Put this shit in my veins, dog. All 10 hours of it. I could watch all 10 hours right now. Just run that shit back. And with the Pippen thing in the contract, look, the contract was horrible, right? And even his agents told him don't do it. Like, that's the thing. Like, his agents told him it's a bad deal. But as you saw, Pippen had 2 paralyzed people at home. He had a brother and his pops was paralyzed. They in Arkansas, dog. You're not in Arkansas because you want to be in Arkansas, dog. So he did what he had to do to get the bread. And once he got the bread, it was a horrific contract. Like, they went and gave Kukoc 4 years and $28 million. And Scottie's sitting here making $2-3 million a year. And they go find some dude from Croatia in the Italian league who's out here getting 7 M's a year. Unproven. Yeah. Can you now see why Scottie always had that chip on his shoulder? So even though he came in on some bravado shit saying he was gonna be better than Mike and all that, and then he quickly realized, oh no, there's other levels. Okay, and you kind of fall back. He then had to realize, okay, well look, I'm still up here though. I'm not gonna be better than that guy. I'm not gonna be better than MJ, but I'm still top 5, top 10 in this league. And yet I'm what was the number they had? 122nd most paid, 6th highest paid player on the Bulls, 122nd in the whole league. Yo, Scottie, and you see it to this day. Even to this day, Scottie still wears it. He throws little shots at MJ when he can. He throws little shots at Bron when he can. Like, he will just always have that chip on his shoulder, man. Because he's a dude from a small town in Arkansas that had made it all the way to the basketball mountaintop. Like, getting off 6 championships and being, 50 greatest players of all time. And, he's always will be in the Pantheon. But he had to go to Houston and Portland to get paid. And that's a travesty. That's a travesty to the fact that the organization did not take care of him. And yes, I know Reinsdorf as a businessman, he said a quote about how, when he signed dudes to contracts, he said, yo, don't come back in here looking to renegotiate. Like, once this deal is done, the deal is done. And he said it to Mike. But again, at least with Mike, he was getting underpaid. until those last couple of years when he banged him in the head for like 30 plus a year. But at least you knew Mike was destroying the game off the court, like with the Nike deal and then Space Jam and shit like that. Like Michael was a Gatorade. He was all of that off the court. McDonald's, he was all of that off the court. So you knew he was making his money on the back end. Scottie wasn't doing that. Scottie didn't have those opportunities. Yeah, he was a Nike dude. He had the flights. I remember those. It was a little something, but it wasn't hitting. It wasn't to the point of MJ. It wasn't no other endorsement stuff. Like he wasn't in no Hanes joints. Like Scottie was just Scottie. So he needed that contract money. He needed to be compensated properly. And the Bulls held firm because that's what organizations do. They don't do the right thing. And that's what I've been preaching here on this podcast is like you have to be careful. And that's what the whole thing of fandom and why I'm so anti-fandom is because you have no control. You can't control your organization. You can't control your general manager. You can't control your owner from doing dumb shit. You can't control your coach from doing dumb shit. So that's why for me, it's like, well, why invest my emotion, my care, my feelings, my money, my time? Why invest those valuable things to something I have no control over? I realized it as I was watching. I was like, yo, look at the teams I grew up watching. Look at the teams I was a fan of. And it speaks volumes of why I feel the way that I feel about organizations. All of the teams that I loved growing up, that I was a fan of growing up, and I'm not a fan of anyone now. But when I was growing up, being a fan of the Bulls, now you're seeing Reinsdorf and Krause, but most importantly, Krause, and how he decided to blow up a dynasty. The only one of my childhood that I was a fan of. Like that was the Bulls were the only team that were actually a winning championship team. I was a fan of the Mets. If you know baseball, or even if you don't, have you heard anything good about the Mets in your lifetime? Because outside of that 1 year in '86, when I wasn't really old enough to really know what the hell was going on, I just knew that the Mets were good. That management blew that team up. Then you have the Chicago Bears, where again, even if you don't know football, have you ever heard anything good about the Bears during your lifetime? Those are the franchises I followed growing up, along with the Blackhawks. I think the Blackhawks have had some runs during my existence, but again, it's hockey, right? So we'll put that to the side. But as of MLB, NFL, and NBA, all of the teams that I loved and followed and were a fan of growing up, the organizations valued itself over the talent. And I think that's what helped create my mindset and my takes and my opinions and the way I look things from a contrarian angle, because I could not believe what was happening to my teams. I could not believe I would see elite players be put on the trade block. I would see bad players being rewarded with horrific contracts. I was seeing unknowns being lauded praise without having doing anything. It was unimaginable to me to see the outright disrespect that Scottie Pippen got. So imagine being a Bulls fan and seeing how Pippen routinely is getting, you know, what he got, $700,000 in 90. Then they got the extension, right? So 2.7 million, then 3.4 million, then back down to 2.9 million, then down again to 2.2 million. Just to jump up to 2.7. Like, what kind of structure was his contract? And I know he was loyal to his agents, because even after the whole Bulls fiasco thing, he still rolled with his agents at the time. But how badly did you need that money? Like, did they not sell Pippen to the masses? Did they not try to get Pip more endorsements? Like I say, he had the flight joints, but I didn't see Scottie on nothing else. But I guess he was that desperate at the time that he needed that bread that he took a shitty deal. And when you take a shitty deal, the only way to get out that deal is to ride that bitch out more times than not. So he had to ride that deal out. But it just goes to show, like, the organizations do not care. The Bulls knew they had a bargain. They knew they had a bargain in Jordan and Pippen, because while Pippen was getting that 2.7, Jordan only getting 3.2 and $4 million in 92 and 3.8 in 95. So they getting the GOAT for cheap. And they're getting a top 50 player for the low. And then here come Tony Kukoc walking in with that $7 million a year. So how would you feel? I mean, you built something and then some other dude flies in who don't know shit, don't know the landscape, don't know that the narratives that have been spun, don't know the debates that have gone on from management in the front office and the players. They has no idea of any of that. Just comes in, yo, they gave me 7 M's. I'm good. Oh, wait. Mike only getting 3.8? And I'm getting 7? Scotty getting 2.9 and I'm getting 7? Oof. Don't put any faith in these organizations. Don't trust them. Don't trust them. There's no reason to trust them. Don't put your money, don't put your time, don't put your emotions into them because they will always find a way to let you down. Don't do it. This whole thing is much about the Bulls organization as it is Jordan. Of course, the underlying thing is Jordan's great. Jordan's a GOAT. Jordan's whatever you want to classify him, right? So we're going to see the excellence of Jordan spread out over 10 hours. But then it seems so far, we got a Pippen episode, which was episode 2. We're going to get a Rodman one next week, right? There's got to be a Phil episode. After that, I mean, who else gets an hour? Can't be a Ron Harper hour, right? Steve Kerr hour? Do you give Bulls Pistons a whole hour? Like, what's episode 4? If episode 3 is the Rodman hour, do you save some of the real hardcore hatred stuff between the Bulls and Pistons for its own episode in episode 4? And how they had to get to that point? The Bulls had to go through taking those 3 straight losses in the playoffs of the Pistons and get over the hump before they could finally get the Pistons up out of here. Is that worth the whole hour? That's going to be interesting because of the main players, if they're not going to do more about the front office, which I don't see how you couldn't, you have to do more about the front office. I mean, Krause probably would get his own hour if he were still living. He would probably get his own hour. Because there's a lot more to his backstory. So you're going to get a Pippen hour. You're going to get a Rodman hour. You're going to get a Phil hour. I would like to think Bulls Pistons is an hour. What else you going to get? There's got to be more of this front office. I need more Krause. And I need more real talk on Krause. Because right now we've only got Jordan and Pippen talking shit about Krause. I would love to hear what Rodman got to say about Krause. But again, Rodman could toe the line. We know how Kerr, Paxson, and Winnington are giving it up. They love Krause. Or at least they're accentuating the positives when it comes to Krause. Who gonna get that real spit? Does Bison Dele get a mention? That's that could be an hour. The Bison Dele story. That should be a thing. Like, you look at the bigs the Bulls had during that era. You're talking Bison Dele, Joe Klein, who made an appearance in the second episode last night. Cartwright, Robert Parrish, Stacey King, Cliff Livingston, Luke Longley. I mean, you're talking about some real, good Lord. I mean, when the Bulls trotted out there, and that's, again, a narrative that I think we're going to talk about and probably nip in the bud. This whole narrative that the Bulls, that Jordan has so much help. Dog, do you realize he won? I just named off a good chunk, but let's rename. Jordan won 6 championships in the NBA in the 90s, when the 90s were all about the big man. So in the era of the big man, when you had the Hakeems, the Shaqs, the Ewings, Alonzo, David Robinson, Barkley was a big man. Karl Malone was a big man. Kemp, Rick Smits. You're talking about the era of the big. The 4s and the 5s ran the 90s. And Jordan won 6 championships with Bill Cartwright, Cliff Livingston, Stacey King, Bison Dele, Luke Longley, Joe Klein, Robert Parrish. And I'm sure there's some, Jack Haley, there's some other guys I'm missing, but those are the bigs that he had to go up against. Shaq, Robinson, Patrick, Hakeem, like that's who he went to war with. And you're telling me he ain't the GOAT? Oh, these 2 hours. These 2 hours spark so much shit. It sparks so much, man. But yeah. So one thing. One thing I hope this allows people to realize and understand is how much David Aldridge was and still is that dude. He was the one. He was the one of ones. When it came to a person of color covering the NBA, talking that real shit, giving it information with no opinions. He didn't have to yell, didn't have to scream, didn't have to rhyme names, didn't have to do any of that. Just straight facts. David Aldridge was that dude. And now when you see what we got now, the overworked and underpaid, well, even more underpaid now, and they put that on Front Street. You know who. When we're stuck with people like that being a basketball authority, you know what we had before? I'm accustomed to the professionalism, the class, the swag of a DA. Not the overworked, underpaid, and even more underpaid, you know who. Give DA his flowers now. Oh, damn, I almost get out of here without talking about the Coke. Dog, the Coke, man, the NBA Coke era is talked about. Like, it's talked about, right? Like, people know, but every time I hear players talk about how it really was, it always amazes me how crazy it was. Even when you go into the 70s with the ABA and that whole thing, like the ABA, oof. Read a couple of books on the ABA. Or a doc. HBO had a doc. I don't remember what the doc was. God damn, that's going to bother me. I got to look it up. HBO did a doc, I believe, on the ABA that was amazing. Some of the stories in there are just like impossible to believe. Those dudes were getting it in a ridiculously major way. And I'm talking about in a way that involved the coke, weed, and hose that MJ talked about when he got to the Bulls. That dudes was in the preseason in Peoria, Illinois. So it's not like, oh, they hit LA, they hit South Beach. Like, we know of the towns in the NBA now where, all right, you know, when dudes go play the Knicks or now the Nets with Brooklyn, dudes get it in New York. They're going to have a long night. Or when they go to Miami and they play the Heat and they on South Beach, they had a long night. Or even with the Pelicans now in New Orleans, dudes go to New Orleans, it's a long night. LA, we already know how they give it up. It's a long night. Nah, dog. The coke thing was so bad in the NBA in the 70s into the 90s that the Chicago Bulls were giving it up in Peoria. Can you imagine the amount, or first off, what's the quality of the coke, weed, and hose in Peoria? Can you imagine being to that level where you're on that coke, weed, and hose level so much that you're trying to find it in Peoria, Illinois, dog? I can't imagine it. I can't imagine the hoes in Peoria. I don't know. But yeah, that was what the league was. That was league-wide. Like, that Bulls team was not an anomaly. That's what the majority of the league was. Weed, coke, and hoes. And then you have MJ, who comes in from this disciplined background off rip from his parents. Then by going to college with North Carolina and Dean Smith. And then he's brought into the league on a team where the majority of the squad is about that coke, weed, and hoes life. Even in preseason in Peoria. So I know the narrative, and you've heard me not give it up for David Stern like others do. And this is why, because David Stern walked into a league that was drug-ridden, NBA Finals on tape. They're like, we know the backstory. But he was gifted Magic and Bird off rip. So you walk in and you got Magic and Bird. Oh, hell nah, I could sell this. White guy, Boston, black guy, LA. Yes, let's build that narrative. Let's build that shit. Put that shit on TV. That's prime time. Light work. Then you're gifted the GOAT. And not only is the GOAT, he's the GOAT, but he has charisma. Chicks was digging him. He could jump through the air like no other. You're gifted him as well. And not only was he gifted individually, but more importantly, he was supremely disciplined. So you didn't have to worry about off the court stuff to a certain degree. You didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. You didn't have to worry about, as Jordan said, the coke, weed, and hoes was not him. He wasn't even drinking yet. So that wasn't his thing. His vice was golf and working to get better at basketball. Those were his vices. Now, I'm sure some other things were some vices. I don't know how much. Is Juanita going to be in here? Are we going to get to hear from Juanita? I know the Suns are going to talk. But is Juanita going to touch the mic? Because then that's a whole... Because the story of how Wada got married, that's some real tea. I'm going to wait for the full 10 hours. But if we don't get the real story of why MJ married Juanita, which you can Google, but if you want to wait with me, then I'll give it to you here on the pod. But the real story of Juanita in the mix, it's one of those ones, trust. But that's what had the league on an upswing and an uptick. Because Stern walks in and gets credit for revitalizing the NBA. It was on his death's door and da-da-da-da. But dog, you walk in and you got Magic and Bird, boom, you had the genius idea of putting that live on television. You had to convince networks to put Magic and Bird on live television. You get credit for that, right? Okay. Then you gifted Michael Jordan, who was the most anti-coke, weed, and hoes dude, and also the best player in the league. So all you did was, all right, well, let's stop marketing the coke dudes because we were forced to because they were the better players. Now we got Magic and Bird. And now we got this super pristine dude, this disciplined, humble superstar dude with, Jordan 1s and, Hanes commercials and Gatorade, all of this. Let's build it around this dude. Y'all should all be like this dude. Be like Mike, right? Build it around this dude. That's what we're giving David Stern credit for? Realizing the obvious? Okay. I'll let y'all do that. I won't. I'm not here for that. So as you know, I'm locked in. I'm locked in on all the rest of the 8 hours. You're going to hear about these 2 hours the entire week. This is the gift that the Full Auto Network has given us during this quarantine. Is that we're going to get Jordan all week, Bulls all week. You're going to find Scott Burrell has been doing shows, doing guest appearances on shows. Like everyone that was associated with the Bulls in some capacity will be useful to us over the next month and change. So I'm here to keep dropping pods, recapping it. I'm not sure if the polls will stop. We may find time to where we do a Last Dance recap plus some other stuff if some stuff is worthy of it. But as of right now, for the next couple of weeks, it's all about the Last Dance. So I appreciate y'all as always. Y'all know what it is. Checking out the pod. Check out Trash Narratives. Also, just launched the website, thesamd.com. You can check that out. thesamd.com. So instead of me sending you one place to get the pod and another place to get the YouTube for Trash Narrative, thesamd, it's all right there. So you can get the pod there, you can get the YouTube there, anything else that I do, it'll be right there. So thesamd.com. Hey man, 2 hours down, 8 to go. I'm here with you. Pick up my podcast. I'm out.